Like little children, we could be happy. We could be out of this addiction. We could walk out of what's called the prison right now. We're in the prison of, for example, food, the prison of food addiction, because that's where we made a higher power. But what happened is we believed you want to be a slave to the corporations. That's what we are. We're being slaves to these corporations and what's going on there, what they're doing. Is that what you want your life to be? You want to be in solitary confinement? Do you realize not only with the corporations, but our thinking? Our thinking. So we have a solution here. When we get over in higher consciousness, spiritual side, spirit of universe, whatever you want to call it, we have a solution. A lot of people believe in certain things and deities and so forth, and they have a lot of faith. People more faith, the less fear, because we put, and I love in the agnostics, it says here for people who say they don't believe in the spirituality of faith, it says that you had faith all the time. Do you realize you had faith that this food and the things the corporations told you is going to make you, it's going to be a higher power and make you happy. You had faith that money, success is going to make you happy. You had faith that if you won the argument, right? How crazy is that? How insane? And that's what brings up the depression and misery in our lives. And we could be in the eternal present. We have this thing called, I always say that there is a thing with the meditation, Eastern, Western philosophies. And I always say these 12 steps, people tell you it's a cult. It's based on major religions and philosophies. Billions of people in the world believe in these things. But you can't find anything. I've read a lot of religious books, tons of them, and there's nothing in this first part of the big book and the steps that aren't, that we can see there. That's in the, it's all in here. It's all in here. It all comes down, hey, look, it's a simple program. It's very simple. It's called letting go. Letting go. What more is there? That's the whole solution, right? So letting go, letting this higher consciousness, which we were born with. Do you understand that and what we could see here, that we were meant to be happy? We could wake up in the morning glorious, but what happens is we wake up and we think of the material. What if somebody says this to me? What if the boss at work yells at me? What if I haven't achieved what I feel other people have achieved in life? So we're going to the material things, the five senses. We could be rocketed into this, what's called the rocket into the fourth dimension, right? Fourth dimension meaning getting, in the big book, and We Agnostic talks about, it's on page 55, rising above our problems. It was relating it to the flight of the Wright brothers, right? They started flying back then, and he said we could rise above our problems. The whole thing is this, look, this is called spirituality. And I love reading in here where and in Doctor's opinion, where he said, the doctors of the day. So here we're going back, in the turn of the century when this was written, right? 1930s, whenever it was. And he says, we doctors can't figure out how to cure these alcoholics and these people with these addictions. So we're looking back then. Isn't it amazing? Isn't it amazing? Here we are years later, all these scientific things going on. We could be on the internet, the Zoom, whatever, be on the moon, and just amazing miracles of these the scientific age, right? But yet, tell me, maybe somebody could come on when we share. We have great shares afterwards if they found the cure through the scientific methods. I mean, again, it talks about, let me just read a few of those things. Here it is right here. And this is the Overeaters Anonymous 12 and 12. And on page 10, it says, then horrified by what we're doing to ourselves with food, we became obsessed with diets. The obsession, right? We spent lots of money on weight loss schemes. We bought all sorts of appetite suppressants. We joined diet clubs and fitness centers. Does this remind you of step one? Step one says we're powerless, but here we're trying to control. Now, the food is related to everything else in our life, and everything else in our life is related to the food. It's all the same nonsense, trying to take control. We joined diet clubs, fitness centers. We had ourselves hypnotized, analyzed. We had major surgery on our digestive system. It goes on and on. Some of us went from doctor to doctor looking. So isn't it amazing that, this book, people say, well, it was written years ago and it's antiquated, but yet the Dr. Silkworth knew. He said, it's beyond our synthetic knowledge. If you go to page Roman numeral 27, let me read that. Roman numeral 27, in Doc's opinion, he says, this is amazing. He said this back then. I'll get to it. Page Roman numeral 27, the doctor have realized in the middle of the page for a long time that some form of moral psychology. You hear these, I was saying the other day, look, I was listening to all of these doctors and experts. And you know what? It was interesting because they were actually talking about AA 12 steps, OA 12-step programs. And actually, a few of them, the psychologists, they came on and they said they had positive things to say. They said, well, it's somewhere people could go to have other people, camaraderie, and talk about their problems, whatever it was. But like the doctor, he used the word in the beginning, moral psychology. And what he was wanting to say was spirituality, but he didn't think he could, really in the science community say that. And sure enough, I listened. It was an hour-long discussion with about 5 and 10 people who are these scientists, and none of them said the word spirituality. None of them. Grace of God or spirituality or any of these things. Years of school I went to, nobody mentioned it. But yet we have the basis of the religions, and for years and years, and billions of people believe in religion. There's a reason. Because when we get the grace and the comprehension, it's really knowing the truth. The big lie is all of this way we think all day long about the self. That's the big lie. We come from dust, we're going to dust. Hey, it's a nonsense of trying to win an argument. Look, 95% of it has to do with resentment towards people. Resentment and anger and fear. And he goes to say, with our ultramodern standards, he called it back then ultramodern, right? Our scientific approach to everything, we are perhaps not well equipped to apply the powers of good that lie out of our synthetic knowledge. So again, you can have your PhD, whatever you have, whatever kind of education, intellect. We have what's called the spiritual solution. It's beyond reason. It's not things that's seen but unseen, right? So it's really something where we let go and we get centered. I call it sometimes related to something like being in the zone. What I mean by that is if you try to hit a golf ball or hit a baseball or catch it, whatever you do in sports, if you really let go, the mind and the body, the perfect computer knows what to do. If you're trying to control something, then you can't, right? It's like being on a surfboard and riding a wave, right? But the same with the diet. We're trying to control it. So how's that going to work out with our mind? So we say, well, I got to eat this, I got to weigh this, I got to do that. And again, I always say, don't misquote me here with no food plan, but there are different ways through God consciousness. Intuitively, we'll know. For me, it's eating healthy, just extremely healthy. I eat plant-based whole food diet. For people always ask that question. And what happened, and I got rid of all my diseases and all the medications I was on. I'm talking about from years ago. I was on like 5, 10 or more medications. I'm on 0 now. It's amazing the food. Food is what's making us ill. We know that, the type 2 diabetes. I mean, we could go on and on about that, the heart disease and all of these problems. But the point is this, is that when we have this change of thinking perception, the only way out, there's only one way out. Even if you have a person has their stomach cut and surgery, if the perception isn't changed, it's just there's no whatever you do, the diet pills, you could take them, millions of them, whatever, so it's not gonna help you. Temporary. So it's temporary. We need a design for living. Cognitive behavioral therapy, if you want to look at it, knowing the truth, right? The 12 steps tells us the truth. The truth is in here. That's why I say the way out is in. You want to resolve your diet program, go inside. And some people say, look, I'm going to end with this too. And I started to realize the more meetings I went to with my addictions, the worse they got, because we're in the problem, not the solution, right? Then all of a sudden, like, 1 or 2 meetings they didn't have, I stayed home and I sat down and read this big book and I got centered. And I found out there's the solution, right? And I tell the story about the guy, he was wanting to go to this rehab center up in some, it was upstate and whatever it was, but he went there and he finally got in. It was very hard to get in there. And when he got all the way up there and he was in there, and he said the guy told him, it was actually a religious order. The guy said to him, he says, look, just go in that room and sit. And then he came out an hour later. He says, what are you making me? I came all the way up here. You're supposed to be the best, right? So you get the idea. He said, just go in that room and sit. Right? Just sit. Get centered. Prayer meditation. That's all it is. We have all the answers are in here. All the joy and happiness is in here. It's only when the self comes in and says, oh, what am I going to do today? I got to do my taxes, or I don't know what, all kinds of crazy thing. Who knows what you got to do? Or physically ill. I'm physically ill. It's still about the self. When we get centered, we could accept our own death. People do, those around us. Because it's not about that. It really isn't. You could get hit by a truck walking down the street now, or who knows what. And the whole thing is that the ego's lying to us all day long. When we're upset during the day, it has to do with the ego.